This week on Sights on the City, we talked to filmmaker Gerret Warner about his film Truth Underground, which is screening Friday night, which is probably tonight for you watching this, May 29th, 7 o'clock p.m. at the Power Plant Theater in the full frame theater in the Power Plant building on the American Tobacco campus.
That was a mouthful. Well done, Chris. Good job. Thank you so much. We love talking to Gerret. Truth Underground is an amazing spoken word poetry story about community and poetry and family and where it all comes from. Thanks so much, of course, to Josh Hart, Made with Heart on the other side of the camera. Our great buddy, Chris Vitiello. You can find him on Twitter. You can read him in the Indie Weekly. You can read his own poetry. He's a magical writer. I'm Aaron Mandel. You can check us out at the Clarion Content YouTube channel at clarioncontentmedia.com for our site and on Twitter at Clarion Content. Sights on the City, Durham. We curate your city. Thank you very much. Yeah, it speaks to how like the artist's mind is constantly whirring, like constantly going, and it's like the spigot is always flowing.
It
and
also speaks to
it.
practice because Dasan is in front of an audience, you know, like 5 days a night. I mean, 5 days a week.
Yeah, he's comfortable having a rowdy room in front of him while he's working. So
Fantastic.
That's key.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. This is the Clarion Content YouTube show, Sights on the City. As always, behind the camera, Josh Hart, Made with Heart, his fabulous productions. And we're sitting here today with a good friend of mine and another good friend of mine, Chris Vitiello, of course, you know. Follow him on Twitter at Vitiello. And our friend Gerret Warner from the film Truth Underground and Warner & Company, which we will be screening for the first time on Friday night, tomorrow, or maybe today by the time you're seeing this, at 7 o'clock at the Full Frame Power Plant Theater, where they will get to show you the rough cut and what's happening. So Gerret, thank you so much. Welcome, Chris. I'm excited to talk poetry and slam poetry. That's what Truth Underground is about. Maybe you could tell people a little bit about the story arc. We were talking off camera earlier about how it follows 3 poets through the spoken word community.
Well, I'll take it back to just the very beginning, briefly. One evening, a Wednesday as it turned out, a first Wednesday of the month, my wife and partner, Mimi Grady, and I were looking for a book at Flyleaf Books. And we heard this noise, this murmur in the back of the building, and people crowding out the door. And so, of course, we walked and leaned over the crowd and witnessed this amazing poetry evening. And we fell in love with it. So,
and what year was that?
It was 3 years ago.
So wow, 2012.
4 maybe. Anyway, I'd been looking for a documentary subject that celebrated the arts in this area. And Mimi and I just looked at each other and said, this is it. So that's where it started. And then we went looking for poets. And we found 3 poets that through a number of incidents of just going and talking to people and going to poetry sessions and slams and so on. And then we found these 3. Jeremy Bergman, the warrior poet, Kamaya Martin, who at the time was a senior at Northern High School in Durham, and C.J. Suit, who was one of the founders of Sacrificial Poets, who was running that event at Flyleaf Books.
Yeah, an organization also founded by high schoolers.
Yeah. So it's really a remarkable community, and we were brand fresh new to it, just open to where it might lead.
I'd love to hear you talk about, I mean, there are a lot of poets working in slam, working in spoken word in the area. Fantastic organizations like Sacrificial Poets, the Bull City Slam team. What drew you to those, to sort of choose those 3 particular poets for the subject of this film?
Well, part of it was just seeing them perform. That night that we went to Carrick, the Carrick Gallery in Durham was having a performance evening. And Aaron and Ned Phillips, who's worked with Warner & Company for years and is a Durham man,
Yeah, Clarion content people are familiar with old Ned. He
Yeah.
shoots both short film for us and writes about the full frame every year. He's been a huge part of the process. So
Yeah.
we didn't know what we were getting into at the Gerret.
So we sat down, and Dasan was hosting this thing, and he introduced this young man who he said the first time he ever met him, he came in this black leather on a motorcycle, put his helmet down and stood up and did this incredible poem on PTSD, which he has. And we all were just overwhelmed, just completely overwhelmed by the
And this is
intensity.
Jeremy, right?
This is Jeremy.
Yeah.
But there were only maybe 6 people at the Gerret.
And the wood
And we were
floors.
3 of them.
Right.
And it made no difference to Jeremy. It was still this bright, shining light in the night. So there was no question. Jeremy was going to be one of the poets. And then we met CJ through Sacrificial Poets.
Sure.
And we saw Kamaya at one of Sacrificial Poets' performances. We liked her. And then Will McInerney, who was the executive director at the time, recommended her. She was the last of the poets for us to find. And boy, we chose right. They've all been wonderful.
Will's a name people really know around here, and I know Dasana Hanu is now involved in the project as a creative consultant. I think it really sort of speaks to the community sense of these poets, that everybody kind of is like, oh yes, not me, but this person, and not just this person, but this person, and the extended sort of educational element that comes to it. You filmed in some schools and stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of giving back, and that was one of the things that attracted us so much. It wasn't just, the sort of rock star poet model.
Right.
And there's that too. Everybody likes to get on stage.
Right.
Or at least people that can do okay like to get on stage.
Yeah, I heard you film some live stuff too. I've seen.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I've seen. I can't say I've heard.
So then, but then there's this remarkable thing, and really Sacrificial Poets is not just a poetry mission. It's a mission to educate youth in the power of the word. So as we've come to see in doing this project, from the day we first started talking about this, poetry saves lives. And you can see it in this movement. And that's in a way how our film evolved. It wasn't just about poetry. It was the fact that poetry actually had this sort of connection to bringing people up, to helping them get out of problems, and to finding a tight, an inner tribe to sort of gather with. All of that's been true. And so the film that I found out I wanted to make, you might say, was not just about poetry and not just about community, but to try to get to know 3 people, one at a time, the life each was living, as it was reflected in the poetry. So what was the interconnectedness of the art with the person, and then how that related to the community? And so that's what we've been wrestling with for 3 years.
At the last full frame, I had a chance to see a documentary about the poet Sonia Sanchez, who's a sort of foundational poet probably for a lot of spoken word and slam performers. She's old now, but the filmmaker, followed her around in her neighborhood in New York and also used a lot of archival footage. The thing that was remarkable about the film to me was how well it balanced footage of performances with talking head interview with her daily life and her mundane interactions with like the guy she buys fruit from every day. And I'm wondering sort of like what are the layers that you have in play in Truth Underground?
Boy, that's a great question, and it speaks right to the heart of documentary challenge, I think, which is which rises to the top, what gets what time. And in this case, it's complicated by the fact that we wanted to give 3 poets equal light. And that was hard, because they're different ages, they're different stages of their art. I feel pretty good about the balance. That will be one of the things that's tested in the audience tomorrow night. It's like, wait, is there too much light on Jeremy, too much on CJ? Does Kamaya really step up? I think it does. And then the other balance was just that, art versus life. But where does the art come from was one of the pressing issues for us. How does that happen? So Kamaya's mother, says something about good artists really learn how to convert pain into art. And when she said that, all of us just sort of stopped breathing, because we realized, whoa, maybe that's the theme. I'm not sure it is, but it's one core theme, which is that you can't really make art that speaks to people unless it comes out of some kind of very deep place. And I think it comes more likely from pain than from joy, even if it's joyful. I don't know anything, but that's the way it feels, is that a lot of these kids and adults and Dasan get up there, and in a way it's a sort of in some cases it's a cry, and I think that's true of poetry generally. In others, it's simply a way of healing the thing that bothers you. You're a poet, so maybe you know better than I do. But that's part of what we were exploring.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand the cry side maybe more than anything else. There is a kind of complaint against something that motivates you to get text down. Yeah. Well, so on Friday night, May 29th, by the way, 7 o'clock, you're screening the current state of the film and the audience, and you're going to be talking with the audience afterwards. What are you hoping to get from that conversation? What's the opportunity for the audience to contribute to the finishing of this film?
Well, there's a lot of opportunity. I'm thrilled by where we've gotten to, because it's been, like every documentary that I've seen at Fresh Docs, it's a huge struggle. People are working on these things for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Right, and it's a struggle on multiple levels. People are pouring their hearts and their wallets and their pockets into it.
We're all a volunteer group. No one's paid. We've basically just put aside the whole issue of cost, and we'll start crowdfunding this summer.
Okay, so Indiegogo Kickstarter campaign
something like
this
that.
summer.
And then
already though you can contribute, right?
Yeah.
There's a 501c3 backing through the Southern Documentary Fund.
Yes.
So you could go to the site and back the poets, back the spoken word poetry, back the film. And I think that that's important, for people to know that it's already possible, and that there's still stuff that has to be done in terms of editing and sound, and an extensive amount of technological money that has to be spent on top of the crew who's been working for 2.5 years.
Well, yeah, so connecting those dots, you were saying what will happen for the audience. We have what I think feels like a finished enough film for an audience to enjoy, to get satisfaction out of. Mm-hmm. But from our point of view, it has quite a ways to go. That balance of how much, we have, for instance, a whole section in which we go to Hillside High School where CJ is in residence, artist in residence. And then we have a competition among high schools. That takes a big chunk, but it's away from, in a way, the poetry performance. Mm-hmm. So that kind of balance issue, the balance among the poets, just the interludes. We take interludes and look at Durham, Chapel Hill.
It speaks to so much, though, of how the poetry is connected to the community. It's connected to the community educationally. It's connected to the community geographically. I mean, when I think of the list of places that you've seen poetry in for this film, including following the poets to nationals in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I think all of that is true, and we feel, you might say, even justified in all the choices we've made.
Sure.
But we're open to the audience's pitch. Whatever they want to say about it, like I said, when kids step up to the dais to say their poem, audiences often say, "Don't be nice." And I've come to really love that phrase. I'd say the same thing to our audience. Don't be nice, help us with ideas. Does this work? Does that work?
Well,
that's
fantastic.
The whole idea of Fresh Docs.
That is terrific. When we're looking forward to it. It's going to be tomorrow night, or tonight if you're seeing this on Friday, at 7 o'clock in the Full Frames Power Plant Theater through the Center for Documentary Studies Fresh Docs series. And from there, it's going to be off to film festivals and much further glory for the poetry community and, of course, the Truth Underground crew. As always, it's a pleasure. Chris, thank you so much.
Don't be nice, Durham.
That's right. It's a good tagline. Thank you so much. This is Sights on the City. We curate your city, Durham.